Brianna Stewart's never going to win another championship, or, Nafisa Collier's better than Maya Moore. Like, instead of those kinds of hot takes, the hot takes solely and explicitly surround all of these Black women.
After cutting relations with one of its well-known figures, Elle Duncan, due to a startling and contentious comment she made about rising basketball star Caitlin Clark, ESPN is in the midst of a firestorm.
Women from different parts of the country, like, she's sort of existed in this bubble.
How arrogant is this?
Fans and commentators alike have been discussing Duncan's remarks for weeks, wondering how it all went so wrong.
Teamed up to do what seemingly every person of color, aka every African.
Many people have been shocked by the swift and severe fallout, which led to ESPN severing connections with Duncan. However, how did things go so bad that Duncan, who was once a well-known personality in sports media, is now unemployed?
Because Caitlin Clark can throw a ball into a basket deeper and better.
Since Caitlin Clark can throw a ball into a basket deeper and better than anyone else, let's start with her. One of the most exciting players in women's basketball, Clark has been lighting up the court with her incredible performances. Her incredible skill and ability to energize fans have made her a breakout star. Many basketball fans watch her games on TV, and her ascent to fame has greatly boosted women's sports. Performance has increased interest in women's basketball overall and increased viewership, but not everyone has been supportive of Clark's accomplishments. For reasons that many people are still unsure of, Duncan chose to concentrate her attention on criticizing Clark, but not in the traditional sense of evaluating her play. Rather, Duncan's remarks were interpreted as extremely personal, with some implying that her main goal was to undermine Clark rather than provide helpful criticism. As soon as fans realized this, the reaction started almost instantly.
Now, seriously, how arrogant is this? Honest to God, this is as arrogant as you can possibly be. I mean, I hear all the time, don't judge me. Don't judge me by the color of the skin. Don't judge me. Really? Okay. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're sitting there and judging me. You're judging a woman you have no idea.
Fans who have followed Clark's journey were offended by Duncan's remark regarding Clark because it seemed to revolve around the concept of privilege. Since Caitlin Clark is renowned for her perseverance and commitment to the game, she has faced many obstacles and had to repeatedly prove herself, just like any other athlete. As a result, many people were offended when Duncan seemed to imply that Clark's success was somehow related to privilege rather than her indisputable talent. Fans perceived this as an unfair dismissal of Clark's. The criticism didn't end there, as many fans and analysts accused Duncan of bringing needless and divisive rhetoric into a discussion that should have been about celebrating athletic achievement rather than concentrating on Clark's skill. They were quick to criticize Duncan for what they perceived to be an attack based on something other than basketball. Although contentious discussions in the sports industry are nothing new, this narrative felt unique because it wasn't about statistics or performance. Felt intimate, which is why it became so contentious as the criticism of Duncan increased. ESPN was in a difficult position. The network has long established itself as a pioneer in sports media, renowned for providing perceptive analysis and commentary, but things were getting out of hand as fans took to social media to vent their frustration and rage. ESPN was forced to make a decision when Duncan's remarks were interpreted as an assault on a cherished athlete who had done nothing but succeed in her sport, and they finally decided to split ways with Duncan in an effort to defuse the situation and move on. But why Duncan made these remarks in the first place is a mystery that many people are still attempting to answer. Some speculate that jealousy may have been involved. In a league where players have battled for years to be recognized and respected, Caitlin Clark's ascent to fame has been nothing short of spectacular, and not everyone is thrilled about it. It's possible that Clark's quick ascent has led to conflict within the league as well as in the larger sports community. Duncan, a well-known figure in sports journalism for a long time, might have believed that Clark posed a challenge to the current order, was receiving attention that others felt they deserved. It's also important to note that this type of situation has happened before in many sports when a young star rises quickly. However, in Clark's case, it seemed particularly harsh because, rather than praising her as a player who is advancing the sport, Duncan's remarks came across as dismissive and, to many, out of touch. It felt like an attempt to undermine everything Clark had worked for. Leap to Clark's support saturating social media with admiration for the rising star, highlighting her outstanding accomplishments, her dedication, and her contribution to the advancement of women's basketball. Clark had earned her success by doing everything correctly. As the situation worsened, ESPN found itself in a challenging position where the network had to consider the public backlash against its respected media figure's efforts to reduce her accomplishments to something as superficial as privilege. For many, this felt like an unwarranted and malicious attack, aimed to preserve a variety of voices and viewpoints. But in this instance, the public's indignation was too loud to ignore. Supporters weren't merely angry, they were demanding action. In order to resolve the issue and demonstrate that they were paying attention to their viewers, ESPN had to move swiftly. Although Duncan's contract termination was a daring move, it ultimately appeared to be their only choice if they were to move past the incident. Duncan has brought up significant issues regarding the function of media personalities in sports, including whether or not commentators should have the freedom to voice viewpoints, even if they are controversial or unpopular. Or is there a boundary that should not be passed when it comes to making personal attacks on athletes? In Duncan's case, many people think that she did, and the outcome was a PR catastrophe for both her and ESPN. For her part, Caitlin Clark has largely remained silent throughout this controversy. She has avoided the drama and instead focused on her strengths as a basketball player. Her on-court exploits have been more powerful than words could ever express, and she has remained one of the most captivating players in the game. For Clark, the best way to deal with all of this has been to keep playing. Despite the criticism, she has continued to dominate on the court and let her skills speak for itself. In many ways, Clark's fanbase has only gotten bigger, and this controversy has only served to highlight the sharp contrast between her professional ISM and the divisiveness of Duncan's remarks. It's obvious that Clark has a bright future and that people respect her for remaining focused on basketball and avoiding the negative discourse surrounding her, allowing anyone or anything to obstruct her path. But what does this signify for ESPN? The network makes a strong statement with its choice to split from Duncan. Personal assaults on athletes will not be accepted, particularly if they appear to be motivated by something other than constructive criticism. By severing connections with Duncan, ESPN hopes to be perceived as a network that honors athletes for their abilities and contributions to the sport rather than one that participates in pointless controversy or contentious criticism. ESPN is making it clear that they take upholding that standard seriously, but this circumstance also calls into question the fundamental nature of sports. General commentary: where does fair criticism end and personal bias begin? It's crucial to take into account the responsibilities that come with having such a big platform in a time when media personalities frequently achieve the same level of fame as the sportsmen they cover. In addition to discussing basketball, Duncan's remarks shaped the narrative surrounding an athlete's career, which many feel was unfair and unjustified in this instance. The sports world is still attempting to comprehend the implications of this for ESPN and, more significantly, how it will impact sports media going forward. For a long time, ESPN has dominated sports television, influencing how sportsmen are portrayed in teams, but this dispute has shown flaws in the system, emphasizing to many supporters the risks of combining personal prejudice with judgment. More than merely a professional blunder, Duncan's remarks were interpreted as an illustration of how subjective goals may trump the need for impartial analysis in sports media. Conversely, Caitlin Clark has managed the matter with grace by focusing on basketball and avoiding the unpleasant vibes generated by Duncan's remarks. Fans have gathered behind her in the wake of this issue, and they now much more admire her for her professionalism and commitment. The capacity of Clark to transcend above the drama is precisely what. Although Clark continues to dominate the court, the larger discussion surrounding ESPN and its handling of this situation highlights some significant points about sports media today. Commentators like Elle Duncan play a significant role in forming public opinion about athletes, and when those opinions are based more on personal bias than fact, it can have a serious impact. In Duncan's case, her remarks seem to be rooted in something deeper than basketball, perhaps jealousy or resentment towards Clark's quick ascent fame. This is where it becomes difficult to distinguish between constructive criticism and personal assaults. The response to Duncan's remarks demonstrated how protective Clark's supporters are of her, and for good reason. Clark has worked hard to achieve her success and is a symbol of what women's basketball could be. With viewership and interest in the sport rising, Clark has given the WNBA new life by drawing in fans who may not have previously watched. Her presence benefits the game, and fans are aware of this, which is why Duncan's remarks hurt so much, because they felt like an try to discredit someone who has done nothing but elevate the sport for ESPN. This instance serves as a warning that, in the social media-driven world of today, when opinions can spread like wildfire, the network needs to be mindful of the narratives it permits its commentators to present. A single blunder can become a PR catastrophe. Duncan's contract termination by ESPN demonstrates their awareness of the need to shield their athletes and brand from needless drama, but it also emphasizes the thin line that sports media personalities must walk. Criticism is a necessary part of the job, but when it veers into personal territory, it can backfire in a large sense. The more important question is how this will affect sports commentary going forward in a field that values bold viewpoints and heated takes. How can we make sure that these viewpoints are supported? To be fair, Duncan's remarks regarding Caitlin Clark seem to be more intended to garner attention than to provide in-depth analysis, and that's where the issue started. Fans prefer commentary that advances their knowledge of the game rather than remarks that disparage players based on subjective opinions. This dispute also highlights the difficulties that women in sports media face. Duncan is a well-known. Her remarks about Clark were extremely hurtful because the female voice at ESPN had a lot of clout and her words carried weight. However, it also begs the question of how we can support women in sports media going forward and foster an atmosphere where women can provide critical analysis without it being interpreted as disparaging their peers. There must be attention paid to this delicate equilibrium. For the time being, Caitlin Clark's focus is still on basketball, and she keeps impressing with her performances and her capacity. She is not only a fantastic player, but also a role model for how athletes should handle adversity. And in this instance, she has demonstrated that the best way to respond to criticism is to keep playing your game and let the results speak for themselves. As for ESPN, the network will need to rebuild trust with its audience. The decision to sever ties with Duncan was a positive step, but it won't undo the damage done by her remarks. One of the most important lessons to be learned from this whole situation is the power of fan reactions. In the past, a controversial statement might have been ignored, but in the age of social media, fans have a louder voice than ever before. When Duncan made her remarks, fans didn't just sit quietly, they spoke out. ESPN will need to make sure that its commentators are held to a higher standard that prioritizes fairness and respect for the athletes they cover. Maintaining credibility in a world where sports media is more scrutinized than ever before is more important than avoiding controversy. Demanding responsibility, it will be interesting to see how ESPN changes its approach to sports commentary in the wake of this controversy. Will they promote more careful fact-based analysis, or will they continue to walk the line between entertainment and controversy for sports media? This direct feedback loop between the audience and media organizations like ESPN is a new reality that media outlets must carefully navigate. In the end, fans hold a lot of power, and in this case, their response played a significant role in ESPN's decision to terminate Duncan's contract. Individuals, this episode serves as a reminder that great responsibility accompanies enormous influence. As part 2 of this ongoing saga develops, it becomes evident that there are lessons to be learned from what transpired with Elle Duncan and Caitlin Clark. Commentators should be mindful of the impact their remarks can have not only on the athletes they cover, but on the entire sports community. Fans and athletes' expectations are shifting, and there is an increasing call for justice, accountability, and respect in how sports media is presented. Media outlets like ESPN must change to remain current and trustworthy in the eyes of their audience when athletes are covered. As an athlete and a representation of what is possible in women's sports, Caitlin Clark will only grow in popularity. Her ability to concentrate during the game in spite of the noise is a testament to her character and her passion for basketball. As for ESPN, they have the chance to use this controversy as a teaching moment that could eventually result in improved future sports coverage that is more considerate. How do you feel about this dispute? How do you feel with Caitlin Clark's handling of the situation? Was ESPN correct to fire Elle Duncan, or was this a harsh decision? If you thought this breakdown was enlightening, please share your opinions in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to receive the most recent sports news and analysis. We appreciate your time and hope to see you again soon.